Hello. Today I wanted to talk about what healing is within a spiritual context. So to start off, I want to discuss social structures and hegemony and the dominant expectations that we are put under in order to fulfill what we're expected to do within this capitalist and patriarchal society. So, hegemony is the dominant social power that unconsciously compels individuals to fall in line with dominant thinkings and practices. To abide by hegemonic conventions is to conform to dominant social expectations. Societal resistance confronts hegemony and patriarchy, challenging the implicit rules that, as citizens, we are meant to follow. So essentially we have, which is evident, obviously, these social structures that we are constantly abiding by and also molding to. And these social structures come in a lot of different forms. They can come in the form of, like government and more broad things like that, or like institutions like school. It can also come in the form of friend groups and subcultural groups and groups that are even so-called alternative groups align with hegemonic conventions in the sense that they still abide by this hierarchical structure, and they still rely on consumerism and capitalism and falling in line with these dominant codes that essentially force you to kind of mold to groups and situations that may not be actually reflective of who you are. So healing is this process of seeing these structures and starting to question and challenge them. It also is seeing how and reflecting on how these structures have affected you personally and the extent to which you have changed yourself to fit into these limiting structures. So, for example, I have molded myself in the past to different groups. And I've changed myself in different ways throughout my life in order to find a sense of belonging in different places. And this, me changing myself and the process of healing basically were hand in hand, in the sense that I had to experience these forms of external validation and of external belonging in order to understand and realize that those external forms of belonging do not actually align with me. And that is obviously the process of like growing up and learning and then growing out of. So the process of healing is essentially peeling back the layers that you no longer are, but were influenced to adopt at some point in your life in order to fit in, or in order to find connection, in order to exist within this society, in order to have a job, in order to whatever, do all of these things. And the process of healing is basically looking at these structures and seeing what you align with and what you do not, and what is you and who you are not anymore. And it's a very reflective process, but it requires a lot of mental work, and it also requires changing your situations until things align with who you are. And I think it's hard a lot of the time because we are obviously conditioned to want these external things like a partner, a job. Obviously, we need these things to an extent, or at least a job. And we're conditioned to feel like, yeah, we need these things. But a lot of the time, part of the healing is realizing that these external structures are actually irrelevant to your happiness or fulfillment. And it's a process of saying no a lot of the time until you find what fits you properly. And it's like a process of resistance and self-trust and will and strength. And there isn't a ton of external reward for it either. In fact, people a lot of the time question your path and don't really understand it. And the thing is, it's like you have to, if you're on this path, it becomes more and more expansive. And it becomes hard to be around people who are still within the bounds of reality and these limitations that they put onto themselves. Because I think like a spiritual outlook and a healing outlook is that these limitations don't really matter. And it's basically this coming into new identities and kind of up-leveling in the extent of up-leveling in a way that reflects your heart and your soul. And it becomes about feeding your heart and your soul versus giving yourself away to these external players. And I know for me, it's been hard to be around superficiality and surface level conversation as I have come into myself more. And so what I'm seeking in my life is reciprocal depth and connection that is real and built on process and feeling, and also ones that hold each other's emotions reciprocally and can understand the layers of humans and the complexity to which we exist. And so that's kind of the type of community I'm currently open to. But it is hard it's a very lonely path, the healing path, because it's not understood by a lot of people, I think. And it is a path of constantly choosing yourself a lot of the time until the right things come into your life, essentially. And you basically have to be taking these aligned actions every step of the way. And in the sense that, let's say you can be healing in your mind, you can be making these strides within your body, but if you're in a physical place that doesn't align with the way that you're moving, that's going to hold you back. And so you have to be constantly putting yourself in situations that are for your best and highest good. And it becomes a commitment to yourself. And this is obviously, it's something that's built over time. But the more you get into it, and the more you start feeling these results in your mind and your body, and you become more at peace with who you are and less shameful about maybe mistakes you've had in the past, or your shadow side, or things like that. You kind of are able to integrate your whole self, void of shame. It becomes very liberating. I also want to talk about patterns and cycles and like programs. So a pattern is something that is just like a cycle that you are in unconsciously, and it's usually occurs because there is something external that is triggering you or that you desire, and you can't let go and you can't release it because it's unconscious pattern that keeps returning, and it's something that you are kind of conditioned to believe and conditioned to keep within your life in this way. So it's a wound usually that is triggered in different ways, but the result of the cycle is always the same. So for example, for me, I used to go for people who were emotionally unavailable or unavailable, and that basically was this cycle of me continuing to go back to the same type of person and not really knowing why, and just kind of finding myself in these situations that I knew weren't good and didn't really have control over what was happening at the time. I had this awareness that the end result of these things wasn't working in my favor, but I didn't have the foresight to see that a decision would end badly for me, because I was so conditioned at the time, and I was just like acting on my wounds. With patterns, it's like, a lot of the time you don't really know you're going into a self-destructive decision before you do it, because you're kind of unconscious about it. And the more I healed, obviously, the more conscious I became, and I realized that specific decisions I just needed to stay away from, or just like weren't for me. And I like realized that I needed to stay away from certain things and certain people. It takes a lot of reflection and awareness to kind of pull yourself out of these patterns. It doesn't stop these cycles until you fully remove yourself from them. And it just keeps coming back in different layers that are like less and less harsh, I guess. So like the more you're kind of like choosing yourself in these processes and like realizing that this isn't for me anymore, the more that the answer becomes that much closer. So like for me, I had experiences where I would still be dating, let's say, and I would be like open to people coming into my life. I would like go on one date and then have this experience where I was like, or it was a couple dates, and I would be like, oh wait, like this isn't actually what I'm looking for. This person's actually kind of emotionally unavailable, whatever. I'm going to tell them no and explain why I said no. And then always the next time I would meet someone and the situation would feel almost a bit more as to what I was looking for, or a bit more fulfilling or whatever. But then it was never quite it. So the universe would always give me clues as to the closer I was getting to what I was looking for. But the thing is like now I don't date at all. I think I'm at a point where I'm just kind of allowing people to come to me, but I know the type of person that I would let into my life, and it's not some random person who I meet casually dating. So it kind of comes down to getting to a place where you can actively say no, and you actively know yourself, and you are just like now living a life where you are completely choosing yourself. And the thing for me with external forces and whatever, and like looking for something outside of myself, it never sat right with me. Whenever I, like, let's say with like the dating example, would try and like go out of my way to date, I felt like a part of myself was being diminished in this way for some reason, or I didn't feel completely whole when I was looking for validation outside of myself. And I've learned that I just can't really be living my life in that way. So like healing and facing your patterns, it's a lot of self-discipline and a lot of self-acceptance, and kind of realizing that you may not be able to do things the way that other people can. And I think that when I was like unhealed, always kind of got to me, because I would be like, I'd have these unavailable relationships over and over again, and I'd be like, why can't I be like everyone else and just like have a normal relationship with someone, and like I want that experience, whatever. But then the thing, and so I would like shame myself, because I would be like, why can't I do this and like other people? But then you realize that that's okay, first off, and there's a lot of power in kind of choosing yourself and letting go of these social expectations and letting go of the pressure of the external world. Because the thing is like, back to the programming and the conditioning, it's like women are conditioned to want a partner, and they think that it's going to make them feel more whole or more saved or more like they belong here, you know? More validated. But in reality, it doesn't usually do that. And like for me, I think part of why I've always had trouble dating is because, I want this soul connection. And it's like, would be, and I used to be kind of spiritually immature in the sense of I would allow people into my life who I kind of just like met on random, or I would not like on random, but like I would be like, oh, like I'm meeting this person, there's like a meaning to this, like I need to explore this and like see if there could be anything between us. But that is usually the wrong answer, because that's not really how it works. It's more so the universe is testing you to choose yourself in those situations. But I know for me, I'm definitely unique, I think, in this way, because I require a really specific type of relationship, and I can't have like surface level connections. So while other people can date casually, I can't. So that's also part of why I would let people go easily, because I can't handle dating casually. But so all to say, but we were talking about patterns, and my knees hurt. So the thing with patterns is that they are going to continue cycling through until you make a different decision. And they're unconscious cycles. You basically have to stop and have this awareness that you are stuck within this pattern in order for it to be released. So, but it's hard to release these things again because of the ways of society and how we think we need to conform to them. But I think there's a lot of solace in accepting that we don't need to conform to these things. And it takes a lot of like deconditioning and understanding what is truly meant for you, and kind of having a lot of faith in the universe to show you and to guide you when you're following your intuition. But yeah, it's important, I think, because I'm someone who, if I feel out of balance and unfulfilled, and let's say like creatively, and like I'm not able to express myself in the way that I want, I feel completely not myself. And it's really important for me, it has been really important for me to kind of figure myself out in this way, because I can't perform for you people, and it makes me feel empty and lonely. So again, now I'm in this kind of period of in-betweenness, but in an exciting way. And I am wanting to build over time, I know this will happen slowly, but a community that values the same things as I do, like depth and real connection that isn't superficial, process, slowness, appreciation of our surroundings and of nature and of ourselves. One that doesn't rely on avoidance or distraction. But yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But I think that if I'm out here, then others are out here who are like me. That's my theory. But yeah. Anyway, I hope that you have a good day, a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.